Welcome to my channel Echoes of Coin. From the silver legacy of 1964 to the mysterious varieties of 1972 and the hidden anniversary treasure of 1996. These coins carry more than just the words liberty and in God we trust. They hold stories of loss, triumph, and secrets that collectors are still chasing today. Which of these coins might be sitting unnoticed in your change, holding a value far beyond its face? The year 1964 marked one of the most important turning points in the history of American coinage. The words "In God We Trust" and "Liberty" had long appeared on U.S. coins, but in 1964, the release of the Kennedy half-dollar forever changed the way people viewed coins not merely as currency, but also as enduring symbols of memory, patriotism, and national values. When we look at the 1964 coinage, especially the half-dollar, we are not only studying metal and engraving but also exploring the mood of a nation grieving, honoring, and redefining itself in the shadow of tragedy. The assassination of President John F. Kennedy in November 1963 shocked the world, and within weeks, plans were set into motion to honor him in the most permanent way America knew how, through its money. Thus, the 1964 Kennedy half-dollar was born, carrying the inscriptions "Liberty" and "In God We Trust" on its obverse, a design that immediately became iconic. To fully understand the significance of the 1964 Liberty coin, it is essential to consider the historical context. For decades, American coinage had reflected both classical ideals and modern sentiments. The motto "In God We Trust" had first appeared during the Civil War in 1864, precisely a century earlier, as a national expression of faith in the midst of crisis. By 1956, it had been declared the official motto of the United States, appearing on both paper currency and coinage as a reaffirmation of America's identity during the Cold War era. In 1964, when the Kennedy half-dollar was struck, the motto held even deeper meaning. It was not just a phrase etched into metal, it was a reflection of a people holding on to belief and unity in a time of grief. The obverse design of the coin features the left-facing bust of John F. Kennedy, sculpted by Gilroy Roberts, who had been chief engraver of the United States Mint. Above Kennedy's head arches the word "Liberty," symbolizing the foundational ideal of the American Republic. Just below his chin, prominently displayed, is the phrase "In God We Trust." The date 1964 sits beneath the portrait, marking not just a year of mintage but also a year of transformation. On the reverse, designed by Frank Gasparo, the presidential seal dominates the field, with an eagle grasping arrows and an olive branch, surrounded by stars and inscriptions that link the coin directly to the presidency. This design reinforced the theme of continuity between the nation and its leader, even after Kennedy's death. The 1964 Kennedy half-dollar was minted in 90% silver and 10% copper, continuing the long-standing tradition of silver coinage in the United States. Each coin weighed 12.5 grams and measured 30.6 millimeters in diameter, giving it a substantial presence in the hand. For collectors, this silver content makes the 1964 edition particularly special, because in subsequent years, silver was removed from most circulating coins due to rising costs and hoarding by the public. The Coinage Act of 1965 reduced silver content in half-dollars to 40%, and by 1971, silver disappeared from circulating halves entirely. Thus, the 1964 Kennedy half-dollar stands as the last regularly issued half-dollar struck in 90% silver, making it both historically and materially significant. The introduction of the coin in early 1964 was met with unprecedented enthusiasm. Millions of Americans rushed to banks to obtain the new Kennedy half-dollar, not for spending, but for saving as a keepsake. Families would stand in lines, sometimes for hours, hoping to secure even a few of the coins. This immediate hoarding meant that very few actually circulated in commerce. For many, it was not just money but a tangible piece of Kennedy's legacy, something to be held, treasured, and passed down. This reaction itself is a testament to the deep emotional connection between the American people and their fallen president. While earlier coin designs had celebrated presidents, liberty, or national symbols, none had been released in such a raw moment of collective mourning. The motto "In God We Trust" on the coin held special significance in this context. For a nation shaken by assassination, The words became a reassurance of continuity, a reminder of moral grounding amidst political turmoil. Placing Kennedy's profile next to the motto subtly tied the late president to the nation's faith and values, reinforcing the idea that his memory would live on within the collective spiritual and patriotic identity of America. The pairing of liberty, above his head, and in God we trust, below his chin, created a triad with the date: liberty, faith, and time. Together, these inscriptions turned the coin into a symbol of the endurance of American ideals through loss. It is worth noting that 1964 was a year of extraordinary coin production. Due to public hoarding, the U.S. Mint struck over 273 million Kennedy half-dollars at the Philadelphia Mint and more than 156 million at the Denver Mint. This massive output still could not meet public demand, as most coins vanished from circulation into private collections and family heirlooms. The sheer volume of mintage underscores the coin's popularity, but also its role as a cultural artifact rather than a mere monetary tool. Few coins in American history have been so widely hoarded upon release, and this phenomenon ensured that the Kennedy half-dollar would remain a lasting icon. The connection between coinage and national identity is an ancient one, going back to the earliest civilizations that used coins as both currency and propaganda. In 1964, the United States reaffirmed this tradition by immortalizing Kennedy's visage in silver. The design itself carried layers of symbolism. Kennedy faces left, his profile rendered in clean lines that convey both dignity and youth. His hair is carefully detailed, reflecting Robert's desire to capture the late president's vitality. The use of the presidential seal on the reverse ties the coin to the authority and continuity of the office, making it clear that Kennedy's legacy transcended his life. Every element of the coin reinforces the themes of liberty, trust, unity, and memory. The 1964 coinage also reminds us of a broader economic transition. At the time, silver was disappearing from circulation around the world, as the value of silver bullion approached or exceeded the face value of coins. This created shortages and accelerated the move toward base metal coinage. The Kennedy half-dollar thus became not only a memorial to a president, but also a last chapter in America's silver coinage tradition. Its heavy silver content gave it an intrinsic worth beyond its denomination, and this only added to its desirability. By 1965, with silver prices rising, Congress was forced to alter coinage compositions, but the 1964 Kennedy half remained an enduring reminder of a different era. For collectors, the coin presents fascinating variations and stories. The most famous is the 1964 proof issue, struck at the Philadelphia Mint, which offers a sharper finish and has been treasured by numismatists ever since. There are also rare errors and varieties, such as the accented hair variety on some proof coins, where Kennedy's hair shows stronger definition. This version is believed to be closer to the original design by Roberts and is particularly prized. Such details transform the 1964 Kennedy half-dollar from a mass-produced artifact into an object of study, where every line and variation tells part of the story. Even beyond numismatics, the coin speaks to cultural memory. In the 1960s, America was navigating immense change. The Cold War, the Civil Rights Movement, the space race, and shifting cultural norms. Kennedy himself had embodied the promise of a new generation of leadership, and his assassination was not merely a political event but a cultural rupture. The 1964 half-dollar allowed Americans to hold in their hands a small, permanent reminder of Kennedy's vision. The words liberty and in God we trust became more than mottos. They became a pledge that his ideals would not be forgotten. The coin thus functioned simultaneously as currency, memorial, and national symbol. The year 1972 occupies a unique place in American numismatic history. It was the height of an era defined by economic uncertainty, political turbulence, and cultural transformation. Yet it was also a year when coinage continued to represent continuity with the nation's traditions. On every major U.S. coin issued in 1972, the inscriptions "Liberty" and "In God We Trust" appeared prominently, reaffirming the nation's values and identity. Among these coins, the Eisenhower Dollar of 1972 stands out as the most significant. Struck in copper nickel-clad composition for circulation and in 40% silver for collectors, the coin carried a bold profile of President Dwight D. Eisenhower on the obverse, and a symbolic reverse design celebrating America's first lunar landing. Together with the smaller denominations, the 1972 coinage as a whole reflects both the practical needs of the economy and the deeper symbolic role of money in shaping national consciousness. To understand why the 1972 Eisenhower dollar and other coins matter, one must begin with the economic context. By the early 1970s, the United States had already moved away from precious metal coinage. Rising silver prices in the 1960s had forced Congress to change the composition of coins. The Kennedy half-dollar, once struck in 90% silver in 1964, and then 40% silver until 1970, had shifted to copper-nickel-clad by 1971. The Eisenhower dollar, introduced in 1971, became the first large-size dollar coin since the peace dollar ended in 1935. Its introduction carried symbolic weight, commemorating both Eisenhower's legacy as a military leader and president, and NASA's achievement of landing on the moon in 1969. By 1972, the Eisenhower dollar had entered its second year of production, with refinements, varieties, and growing collector interest. The coin's inscriptions of liberty, above Eisenhower's head, and in God we trust, to the left of his portrait captured the enduring values of the United States, even as its economy underwent rapid shifts. The obverse of the Eisenhower dollar was designed by chief engraver Frank Gasparo. It depicts Eisenhower facing left, a strong and straightforward portrait of a man who embodied military leadership during World War II and presidential leadership during the Cold War. Above his head is the word liberty, spread boldly across the coin's surface, a reminder of the guiding principle of the Republic. To the left, aligned with the portrait's neck and chin, are the words "In God We Trust," the official national motto since 1956, but present on coinage long before. Beneath Eisenhower's profile is the date, 1972. These elements combine to create an image of strength, dignity, and continuity. For a nation grappling with inflation, the Vietnam War, and domestic divisions, the Eisenhower dollar projected stability and tradition. The reverse design of the 1972 Eisenhower dollar was equally symbolic. Inspired by the Apollo 11 mission insignia, it features an eagle landing on the surface of the moon, clutching an olive branch of peace, with Earth visible in the background. This imagery connected the coin to one of America's greatest achievements, the successful manned lunar landing of 1969. It symbolized exploration, peace, and global vision. Surrounding the eagle are the inscriptions United States of America and $1, along with E pluribus unum, the traditional motto meaning, out of many, one. This reverse tied America's recent triumphs in space exploration to its enduring ideals of unity and peace. In 1972, as the space race remained a source of national pride, the Eisenhower dollar's reverse served as a tangible reminder of technological achievement and the broader aspirations of mankind. The Eisenhower dollar of 1972 is especially notable to collectors because of its varieties. That year, 3 distinct reverse types were produced at the Philadelphia Mint. The differences lie primarily in the rendering of Earth as it appears behind the eagle. The Type 1 reverse, used early in the year, shows a weakly defined Earth with indistinct islands. The Type 2 reverse, far rarer, has a much clearer Earth with sharply defined islands near Florida and the Caribbean. This version was struck only for a short time and is highly sought after by collectors. The Type 3 reverse, used for the majority of 1972 production, features yet another rendering with subtle differences in the Earth's geography. These varieties transformed the 1972 Eisenhower dollar from a standard circulation issue into a series of coins that invite close study, attention to detail, and appreciation of minting variations. For numismatists, these distinctions became part of the lore and fascination of collecting. The Philadelphia Mint struck over 75 million Eisenhower dollars in 1972, while the Denver Mint produced more than 92 million. The San Francisco Mint, meanwhile, issued both proof coins and 40% silver collector editions, known as blue ikes for uncirculated versions and brown ikes for proofs. These silver-clad coins were not intended for general circulation but rather for collectors, reflecting the growing recognition of numismatics as a popular hobby. The availability of both clad and silver issues meant that the Eisenhower dollar bridged the world of everyday commerce and collector appreciation. The 1972 issues in particular remain a centerpiece for anyone building a complete Eisenhower dollar set, especially because of the distinct reverse types. While the Eisenhower dollar dominates discussions of 1972 coinage, the smaller denominations also carried the inscriptions Liberty and In God We Trust, each in their own way reaffirming national ideals. The 1972 Lincoln cent continued Victor David Brenner's long-running design, first issued in 1909. The obverse depicted Abraham Lincoln, facing right, with Liberty to the left and In God We Trust, arching above his head. The reverse, at that time, still displayed the Lincoln Memorial, introduced in 1959. Billions of 1972 cents were struck, making them a common coin. Yet even within these massive mintages, collectors find varieties such as the famous 1972 double die obverse cent, where Liberty and In God We Trust appear doubled due to a die error. This variety has become one of the most desirable modern Lincoln cents, commanding significant premiums in higher grades. Such an error turns an ordinary coin into a symbol of rarity, chance, and fascination. The 1972 Jefferson nickel, designed by Felix Schlag, featured the familiar left-facing profile of Thomas Jefferson. The inscriptions Liberty and the year 1972 appear to the left in Jefferson's own script-style lettering, while In God We Trust is to the right. The reverse continued to feature Jefferson's Monticello home, tying the coin to architectural heritage and historical memory. Although nickels of 1972 did not yield major varieties like the cent or dollar, they remain part of the broader picture of U.S. coinage, reinforcing the same values on a smaller scale. The 1972 Roosevelt Dime carried John R. Sinek's portrait of Franklin Roosevelt, with Liberty prominently on the left and In God We Trust beneath the chin. The reverse, designed by Sinek and later modified, displayed a torch, olive branch, and oak branch, symbols of liberty, peace, and strength. By 1972, dimes had long since lost their silver content, being struck in copper nickel-clad since 1965. Yet the coin retained its symbolic value and practical role in commerce. Each 1972 dime carried forward the national ideals expressed in its inscriptions. The 1972 Washington quarter, designed by John Flanagan, bore George Washington's right-facing profile. Liberty arched above his head. In God We Trust appeared to the left, and the date 1972 was placed below. The reverse still featured the heraldic eagle with outstretched wings, arrows, and olive branches, echoing national strength and the balance of war and peace. Quarters were essential in everyday transactions, vending machines, and commerce, making them one of the most widely used carriers of the national motto and ideals. The 1972 Kennedy half dollar, by Gilroy Roberts and Frank Gasparo, continued to honor John F. Kennedy nearly a decade after his death. The obverse displayed his left-facing bust with Liberty, arching above and In God We Trust, divided by his neck. The reverse carried the presidential seal with its eagle and shield. By 1972, the coin had shifted entirely to copper nickel-clad, losing its silver content, yet it retained its commemorative and symbolic power. Though it circulated less widely than quarters or dimes, it remained a poignant reminder of Kennedy's legacy, tied inseparably to the values of liberty and trust. The year 1996 occupies a special place in the story of American coinage. It was a year when the nation's coins still carried the familiar inscriptions of liberty and In God We Trust, traditions that had defined United States currency for generations. Every denomination struck that year, from the humble Lincoln cent to the special Roosevelt dime issued with the W mintmark, bore these words as a constant reminder of the nation's ideals. While at first glance the 1996 coins might appear ordinary, they represent a fascinating point in numismatic history. They marked the continuation of long-standing designs, the quiet transition of minting technology, and the celebration of a half-century legacy for one of America's most familiar coins, the Roosevelt Dime. To study the coinage of 1996 is to study not only metal and engravings but also the enduring values of a nation expressed through its money. The most significant numismatic event of the year was the release of the 1996 W. Roosevelt Dime. To honor the 50th anniversary of the Roosevelt Dime series, the United States Mint produced a limited number of these special dimes at the West Point Mint, identified by the W mintmark. This was the first time in history that the West Point facility struck a dime for general collectors, making the 1996 W instantly notable. Although the mintage was not particularly high by modern standards, just over 1.4 million pieces, it was unique because it was not issued into circulation. Instead, it was included exclusively in the 1996 uncirculated coin sets. This ensured that every collector who purchased a set would own an example, while at the same time preserving its status as a numismatic milestone. The inclusion of the W dime in these sets made 1996 one of the most memorable years in modern coinage. The obverse of the Roosevelt Dime in 1996 continued to feature John R. Sinek's portrait of President Franklin D. Roosevelt, first introduced in 1946, the year after his death. Roosevelt's profile faces left, with the word liberty prominently placed to the left side, aligned with his forehead and hairline. Just below, in smaller letters, the phrase "In God We Trust" appears near the neckline. The date 1996 is positioned to the right, and beneath it sits the mint mark, which for that year could be P, D, S, or, in the case of the anniversary issue, W. This simple arrangement of inscriptions carries profound meaning. Liberty as the overarching principle, trust in God as the moral foundation, and the date as the anchor in time. The reverse design of the dime featured the familiar torch flanked by an olive branch on the left and an oak branch on the right, symbolizing liberty, peace, and strength. The inscriptions United States of America, E pluribus unum, and one dime complete the design, creating a balance of symbolism and practicality. The 1996 W dime, therefore, was not merely another coin. It was a celebration of continuity, tradition, and the enduring values engraved into every American coin. While the Roosevelt dime captured the spotlight in 1996, the Lincoln cent remained the workhorse of American currency. Billions of cents were struck at both the Philadelphia and Denver mints, ensuring that the coin remained a fixture of daily commerce. The obverse, designed by Victor David Brenner in 1909, depicted the right-facing profile of Abraham Lincoln, the nation's 16th president. Above his head arched the word liberty, a constant reminder of the principle for which Lincoln himself had fought during the Civil War. To the right, the motto "In God We Trust" appeared prominently above the portrait, affirming the nation's faith and unity. The date 1996 was inscribed below, with the mint mark to the right. The reverse still displayed the Lincoln Memorial, a design first introduced in 1959 to commemorate the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. When studied closely, the design even shows a tiny statue of Lincoln within the memorial, linking the obverse and reverse thematically. Every 1996 Lincoln cent, whether struck for circulation or as part of proof and uncirculated sets, carried forward this tradition. Though worth only 1 cent in commerce, the coin symbolized far more in cultural memory and national identity. The Jefferson nickel of 1996 continued Felix Schlag's long-running design, first issued in 1938. On the obverse, Jefferson faces left, his gaze firm and reflective. To the left of his profile appears the word liberty, rendered in Jefferson's own handwriting style. Beside it is the date 1996, tying the founding fathers' ideals to the present. To the right of the portrait, near his chin and neck, sits the inscription, "In God We Trust," balancing the design. The reverse shows Monticello, Jefferson's Virginia home, with the inscriptions "E pluribus unum," Monticello, 5 cents, and United States of America. In 1996, millions of nickels poured from the Philadelphia and Denver mints, continuing the coin's vital role in everyday commerce. Although no dramatic varieties emerged that year, each nickel reaffirmed the link between Jefferson's vision of liberty, the national motto, and the coinage carried in the pockets of millions of Americans. The Roosevelt dime aside, the Washington quarter of 1996 was also highly significant. John Flanagan design, first issued in 1932 to commemorate George Washington's 200th birthday, was still in use. The obverse portrayed Washington facing left, with liberty boldly placed above his head. To the left, near the neckline, the motto "In God We Trust" was inscribed, while the date 1996, appeared below the portrait. The reverse displayed the heraldic eagle with outstretched wings, perched on a bundle of arrows and surrounded by olive branches, signifying both strength and peace. By 1996, collectors and mint officials alike were preparing for a transformation in the quarter series, as plans for the state quarters program were underway. This made the 1996 Washington quarter one of the last issues before the series shifted dramatically in 1999. As such, the 1996 quarter represents the final chapter of an era, standing as a bridge between tradition and innovation in U.S. coinage. The Kennedy half-dollar of 1996 carried forward the design introduced in 1964 after President John F. Kennedy's assassination. Gilroy Roberts' obverse portrait of Kennedy faced left, with the word liberty arching across the top. The motto "In God We Trust" was split on either side of the portrait, framing Kennedy's chin and neck. The date, 1996, appeared below the bust. The reverse, designed by Frank Gasparo, displayed the presidential seal with its eagle, shield, olive branches, and arrows, surrounded by a ring of stars. By 1996, the half-dollar had largely disappeared from everyday circulation, as public use had diminished sharply in the 1980s and 1990s. Most half-dollars of this period were struck for collectors rather than for mass commerce. Nonetheless, the coin retained its symbolic value, representing Kennedy's legacy and the enduring national principles of liberty and trust in God. The Kennedy half-dollar of 1996 reminds us of the way coinage can preserve memory even when it no longer plays a central role in daily exchange. The dollar coin of 1996 was the Susan B. Anthony dollar, first introduced in 1979. Although it had been largely rejected by the public due to its size and similarity to the quarter, the design remained historically important. By 1996, however, no new Susan B. Anthony dollars were struck for circulation, as existing stockpiles were sufficient. Still, the coin's design remained an example of how liberty and trust were expressed in modern form. The obverse bore the portrait of Susan B. Anthony, the pioneering suffragist, with liberty above her head and "In God We Trust" to the right. The reverse depicted the Apollo 11 insignia, an eagle landing on the moon with Earth in the background, echoing the Eisenhower Dollar's design. Although not freshly minted in 1996, the Anthony dollar lingered in circulation as a reminder of the connection between liberty, equality, and national achievement. Taken together, the coins of 1996 tell a story of continuity and change. On one hand, the designs had become deeply familiar, almost timeless, repeated year after year in the hands of millions of people. On the other hand, subtle shifts were taking place. The introduction of the 1996 W dime, the fading circulation of the half-dollar, and the coming replacement of the Washington quarter series. Throughout these transitions, the constant elements were the inscriptions themselves, liberty, and "In God We Trust." These words appeared on every denomination, reaffirming the shared values of a diverse nation. They served as a kind of silent pledge, repeated billions of times across billions of coins, binding the present to the past and projecting it into the future.